Good evening, and welcome to the Forum for Candidates for Mayor of Carbondale, sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Jackson County and by WSID Radio. Tonight's forum reflects one of the League's primary goals, which is to encourage the informed and active participation of citizens in government. I'm Dorsey Prosser, and I will moderate this evening's event. Our candidates tonight are seated in alphabetical order, and I will introduce them to you now. They can give a sign as I introduce them, please. Mr. Joel Fritzler, Mr. Sam Goldman, Mr. Stephen Haynes, and Mr. George Maroney. Okay, I'm going to mention a few guidelines and instructions. First, I'm going to ask the audience if they would please hold their applause until the end of the evening. And the way the forum is structured, there will be 3 parts. In the first part of the forum, the candidates will respond to 8 questions that have been prepared by members of the League of Women Voters. The maximum response for the first 8 is 1 minute and 30 seconds. And if the League is not asked questions that you have a burning desire to know, I'm hopeful that all of the candidates will remain afterwards and you will have the opportunity to ask them on an individual basis. So please feel free to stay afterwards and approach your candidates and get the questions answered. Okay, our second part of their forum, we're going to do something a little bit different. For 1 question, the candidates will be able to ask a question of their fellow candidates. So when it's your turn, candidates, you will get to ask a question, and your fellow candidates will answer, and then at that conclusion, you too will have a chance to answer or comment on the responses of others. All right, the third part of the forum is closing statements, where you will have 1 minute. And the order of responding has been decided by a drawing, and Mr. Haynes will be our first responder. After that, we will rotate as to who goes first. The responses are timed. A yellow card, you'll see this held up, will be held up to indicate that 20 seconds remain. A red card will be held up to indicate that no time remains and remarks must be concluded. So please keep your eye on our timers, Kathy and Elena, that are here in the front row. All right, are there any questions? All right. If not, we'll go ahead and begin our questions. And again, you're going to have 1 minute and 30 seconds to respond. All right. In 1966, the city manager form of municipal government was established in Carbondale as a result of a referendum initiated by its citizens. Some of the roles and responsibilities of the city manager and the mayor are defined by Illinois statutes. From your point of view, which roles and responsibilities would belong to you as mayor, and which roles and responsibilities would belong to the city manager? Mr. Haynes?
Good evening. On first half, I'd like to thank WSIU Radio and the League for having us here this evening and my fellow candidates for participating. My definition and what I believe is a true outcome of your question is that the city manager form of government allows for the day-to-day operations to be handled by the city manager. The mayor, whoever the individual would be the individual who would be the figurehead or the individual who would be in charge of meetings of the council and portions like that, but would also be an individual who would be out there promoting Carbondale as a unique and good community that we are. And the diversity of Carbondale as it shows it in this room and with all of us up here. So I think that to try and fully define the role of the mayor in that realm leaves a little bit of latitude to whoever holds that position. That's not to say that he or she, whoever will be there, has to limit him or herself. But that means that they will follow the rules and the guidelines that are set up by state statutes and will also be out here for the citizens of Carbondale and to promote Carbondale as a whole. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Maroney.
Well, the city manager is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the city, and to also provide for the planning long-term for the city. I think the mayor's function comes in providing a different type of leadership, and that provides more for the vision, setting the goals, the monitoring factor, which I would see is a monitoring factor of the city manager, and conducting the business with the council, and also serving as the principal spokesperson for the city in matters of legislative activities, Springfield, economic development activities coming into the community, things of this nature.
Thank you. Mr. Pritzker?
I guess we can start saying ditto like we did at the last one. But yeah, the manager, he's responsible for the day-to-day operations, whereas the mayor and the council, they're in charge of basically setting policy and providing guidance to the city manager and his staff as far as the direction that the council feels that the city should be moving in. I also agree that the mayor is also there to lead the council and also lead the city, and also unite the residents. I think that's one of the key things that we're missing now is we have, as everyone knows, Carbondale is a very diverse town. I mean, some very extreme on the left, very extreme on the right, and the various ethnic groups, and probably the most diverse population in Chicago here in Illinois. Also, the mayor is responsible for taking the lead during emergencies, such as if we're having a storm or if there's an accident, God forbid, with the railroad tracks. So that's some of the key things that the mayor is supposed to be doing.
Thank you. Mr. Goldman?
The city of Carbondale is like a very complex organization. And there are so many things that are needed to keep the machinery of the city going. And in many ways, one could say that the city manager is the chief operating officer of the city, taking care of the day-to-day functions, seeing that things are working well, being a face out into the community to explain how things are going, but also being an individual who reports directly to the mayor and to the council, of course, but to the mayor, who really is the chief executive of the city. And as chief executive for this complex organization, the mayor has a multitude of responsibilities. They're not day-to-day operating issues, but they involve linkages to the legislature, linkages to the federal government, linkages among agencies, and very importantly, the mayor is the face of the community. The mayor is out there meeting and greeting people, and very importantly, the mayor is out working with corporations, with groups, and trying to bring them to move to the city of Carbondale. It is very imperative that the mayor and the city manager work very, very closely together so that the city functions smoothly.
Thank you. Second question. What is your opinion about privatization of city services like water, sewer, trash, or any other city services? What do you think would be the consequences of services, whether they remain public or if they would go private? Mr. Maroney?
I'm pretty much opposed to the privatization of city services. I know there was a plan floated a while back which made no economic sense at all with regard to water. And I just cannot foresee under current conditions, current market conditions, where the city would entertain the privatization of services. Some will see it as a way to get around and beat the pension system. You're going to pay no matter what you do with those services. Somehow you're going to pay. And I just don't think it's the right way to go.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pritzker?
Well, that's really, yeah, privatization is like the worst idea that we do. Because, I mean, those are the primary needs or actually concerns and I guess duties of the cities providing for your good drinking water, sewer system, garbage disposal, police and fire protection. I mean, the quality would go down drastically. I mean, that's one reason why I'm actually here in Carbondale. The reason why I moved here is because of the quality of water that we have. If we were to sell our water plant first of all, whoever company is that buys it, they're going to need some return on their investment pretty soon, because so they would raise the prices, and you probably see reduction in quality and services. And same thing with our garbage collection. I mean, right now well, I think we're still paying for a few of our trucks, but I mean, right now we have control of that, and we have a good recycling program. We've actually been expanding that, and again, we shouldn't be losing control of those services.
Thank you. Mr. Goldman?
The city of Chicago has tried the privatization of its meters. Some of you may have read this. And the original number was astronomical, billions of dollars, and they are losing their shirts on it. I think if Mayor Daley had this to do over again, he wouldn't even touch it. And I don't blame him. I think that when you privatize, when you hand over to somebody else the responsibility to carry forward a major city function, you lose control over it. And you then end up in the hands of people who have a different interest from your own interest in the city. I don't think it's a very good idea. I certainly would not support it. There are some very basic functions that the city has to carry forward, and that's a function that the citizenry need to be very much involved with, and the citizenry needs to be very much involved in evaluating how it is done, and they have to evaluate the elected officials to make sure it was done right. So I really do not support it.
Thank you. Mr. Haynes?
Well, first off, one thing I want to apologize to Mr. Maroney again. I have to concur again with you, sir, on another question.
Don't let it happen again.
I'll try my best not to. I think that we all are in an agreement up here that the privatization of our basic services to the citizens of Carbondale is a bad thing. And I think that you saw that in the discussion that was started from the mayor's policy switch or potential policy switch to selling the water services. The outcry that came from the citizens was distinct and definitive, and I think that means that we as elected officials have to listen to that and take that responsibility in hand. To do those things is to take away the basic services. Again, like my fellow candidates up here have spoken, to take away some of the basic services that we provide for citizens, including fire and police and water.
Thank you. All right. Next question. Does the city have a role in financing public education? Please explain your position. Mr. Fritzler?
I would have to say no, and again, just focusing on what our mission is. I mean, the city has the mission of, again, of providing, for the public's health and safety with, police, fire, water, sewer, garbage. Where the schools have a mission, for educating our youth. The hospital has a mission, for providing health care. SIU has a mission. We all have our missions, and right now we've actually had to cut back. I mean, the key positions that the city is actually missing right now are our Director of Development Services, our Manager of Building and Neighborhood Services, our Manager of Planning Services. I mean, these are three key positions that are important, for our residents, for our neighborhoods. So if we're not able to afford, services that are necessary, for the community that the city is supposed to be providing, I don't think we should be spending money on services that the school district should be providing, especially since they're the bulk of our property taxes here in town.